Well, Betsy, I'm a little bit worked up. First off, I want to talk about dumb as rock Rex Tillerson, who snuck in to give his testimony, secret testimony, basically against the entire concept of oversight of the Congress. And remember, Rex Tillerson and Trump never agreed on anything, ever. He was the worst Secretary of State ever. He thought he was in charge of the state, not the secretary to the president.
Well, he's a globalist. Why in the world did anybody recommend that he get on the team?
Because Trump needed to suck his brain dry of the way that globalists run the world. Remember, the company that he ran was like this, had like the 17th largest GDP. I mean, it was like larger than nations. Okay, so he was a nation. Exxon is a nation. He needed that. So Rex Tillerson, you're a jerk. And your testimony meant nothing. And notice that nothing came out of your testimony because you have nothing to say because Trump never trusted you. And that's the reason you were fired, because you're dumb as a rock. And you were a liar when you made all those remarks about Trump. Look, he's successful. You're not. You're just thrown to the side. You're been kicked to the curb. Okay? And why? Because you are a pathetic attempt at being a Secretary of State. Now,
But did you hear Nancy Pelosi's speech just recently? Talk about people who are off their rocker.
well, we've said this from the beginning. Nancy Pelosi is insane. Her drugs do not do their job. Announcing yesterday before she met with Trump to meet on infrastructure to say that he is running a cover-up is insane. Now, the reason she said that is because of what we're going to talk about today. The Telegraph. We told you the Telegraph is nothing more than a yellow journalism propaganda rag used by the British monarchy and the British government to cover themselves. It's the story they want you to believe. And they believe once they print it that basically because they have no free speech there, no one can contest it, so therefore it might as well just be law. But it's not law, because recently, as we told you, all of the criminals are coming out with their alibis. Now the entire British Spygate group, which is more extensive than anyone knew, except for Judicial Watch, and we've already pointed this out, they were working, of course, against Trump, and they were helping lead the attack.
Lead is a very important word here, because some reporters would like you to think that Obama asked the English for assistance, and that's not the way it is.
Now, we now know from the Telegraph report, 2 articles that the Telegraph in Britain printed. It's their alibi. Well, they state things in there that we had already told you, which we had proof of, which then they are now basically trying to cover their trail. You want to talk about a cover-up, Pelosi? The cover-up is the British cover-up. And now we have Devin Nunes writing a letter to the president saying, when you meet with Theresa May, and the Telegraph article says Theresa May was never informed of all of this conspiracy against Trump and the Steele dossier, which was basically handled by everyone in the British intelligence community. They all had it. But now they're trying to say they only had it after the election to try to cover their trail.
Are you kidding? It is the British that ran the whole overthrow of Donald Trump. That's it, bottom line. And their lies and their propaganda will not cover up the truth.
Now, we know that we have the proof all the way back to January of 2016 that McCain was involved with Andrew Wood and was involved with Christopher Steele and was involved with everyone. I'm going to explain here in a minute the way that it really falls out, which is basically exactly the way we told you it falls out. The first involvement of Five Eyes and British spying on us was done, as we told you, in April of 2015. Why do we know that? Because we were told the cockamamie stories that the FBI came to the DNC in April of 2015 and said, hey, we think your surfer has been compromised. That wasn't the FBI. The article in the Telegraph says it was the Brits. Yes. Now, here's what's really strange, and this is where you have to read between the lines. The Brits in their article in the Telegraph say that they came and they noticed that there was some chatter back and forth between the Trump campaign and Russians. Okay, hold the horses. There was no Trump campaign. There was no interaction between Russia and Trump campaign in 2015 in April. That's a lie. That was the FBI's covering the FBI story that the FBI came to the DNC and said, you've been hacked by Russia in April of 2015. We know this. Comey said it it was said repeatedly by Comey and others. And then the DNC said, no, we're not going to let you look at our server. Okay, that is when the British noticed the interaction of the Hillary Clinton emails, the server, and the DNC server in Podesta. They were all being hacked. Who were they being hacked by? Not Russians. It was being internally hacked by Imran Aron. This is a fact. All the DNC, all of the IT people on the Hill for the House, for the Democratic House members, have all testified to this, that Imran Awan had already set up this subterfuge, this espionage. It was going on. They knew this. Did Hillary care? No, because she knew that the Chinese were getting a copy. Everybody was getting a copy except the Russians, the Pakistanis, the Israelis. Everybody had a copy, okay?
And the American people.
Yeah, the American people didn't get it, and we still don't have it. Because why? Christopher Wray has copies of all of it, but he won't give it up. Now, this was the lie told in the Telegraph that said, we, as Five Eyes, were pulled in because of Russian connections to Trump in April of 2015. Oh my gosh. This is the preparation for the redaction of the FISA court warrant justification material, which is going to show that the Brits were deeply involved. The Brits were beyond deeply involved, okay? Now I'm going to tell you what has come out, which we already knew because Judicial Watch's FOIA requests got these notes.
Listen, they were using their friendship. The Brits were using our supposed friendship to overthrow the election that Americans went to the polls and voted for President Trump, and you have the Brits over there trying to overthrow this result and topple our government. These are not our friends. They are our enemy.
And they say Theresa May was never informed, though
Baloney.
Sir Charles Farr, who was the head of the Joint Intelligence Committee, Andrew Parker, the head of the MI5, Alex Younger, the head of MI6, all knew about it. But now they say they didn't know about it until after the election. Lie. We know when they knew about it. They knew about it in April of 2015 when this whole thing started. And they were already meeting with Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele had meeting after meeting with the head person for intelligence in Britain. They went over every single sentence of the 16 installments to the Trump-Russia dossier, which was all lies. And any intelligence person that would believe a single word of it is an idiot. So they didn't go over it. Christopher Steele didn't go to Sir Charles Farr to say, hey, what do you think of this? He knew where it came from. Christopher Steele knew where it came from. It came from Cody Shearer. It came from Blumenthal. It came from Comey. It came from McCabe. It came from Perkins Coie. It came from Glenn Simpson. It came from Nellie Orr. It came from Bruce Orr. It came from the FBI. It came from everybody.
But yet Nancy Pelosi says President Trump is having a cover-up.
The cover-up is going on in Britain, and Pelosi's trying to help it.
Yes.
Now, when Christopher Steele met with Sir Charles Farr, he should have been fired if he believed that that was a real document. So, can we surmise from that? He helped write it. He helped create it. And he was the person that Sir Richard Dearlove, the ex-head of MI6, who was retired, when he met with Christopher Steele was told by Sir Dearlove, go and give it to this person who will take it to the Americans. That person was Sir Charles Farr. But now this isn't good enough, because also the British ambassador to the Russians, Andrew Wood, was involved in this. The Australian High Commissioner to Britain, Alexander Downer, was right there. Put them all in one room. They might as well be all in one room with, as you're going to point out,
what?
Miss Haspel.
Oh, with Gina Haspel.
She had to have been there.
She's in the London CIA office running this. Of course she knows this has gone down. In fact, she's complicit with this.
And the idea that Theresa May didn't know is stupid and insane.
And I want to know, has Gina Haspel given a full report to the president about the British overthrow of his presidency?
And because we know that Robert Hannigan was also involved directly and he met, literally we know the date that he met, and who did he meet with? He didn't meet with his counterpart, which would have been Admiral Rogers. He met with John Brennan, the traitor, who helped set up all of this based upon no evidence, no intelligence.
Well,
And
they
we
don't
went
need
over that
that.
yesterday.
If you're running an overthrow of another government, you're just going to do what you have to do.
Now, here's the big deal. During Obama's administration, he sent Kathleen Kavalek, who is a deputy assistant to the U.S. State Department, who directly worked for Victoria Nuland, who was one of the sources of the nonsense that there was a call from Estonia saying that Russia had compromised material on Trump. That's it. Was the lie of Victoria Nuland, who was the head of the Europe and Eurasian, and her assistant, Kathleen Kavalek, went and met with Christopher Steele in London after he met with Sir Charles Farr, after he met with Sir Richard Dearlove, after he met with Arvinder Sambhai, after he met with Alison Saunders. It is impossible to imagine that Theresa May did not know this, and it is impossible to imagine that the Privy Council members, Lord Malloch-Brown, Patty, and the rest of them, they had to have known. There could not have been an intelligence action against another country to unseat basically to destroy an election, to destroy a president-elect, and to unseat a duly elected president without it going to Theresa May and directly to the Queen.
And
no
why,
way
and,
this
and
could have
why
happened.
every American should be royally PO'd is think about all the wars that we have gone over there to support the British in their fight for freedom. And they turn around and do this to us? I'm telling you, we need some economic sanctions on these oligarchs and Privy Council people. What are we going to do about this?
Well, one thing's for sure. Victoria Nuland did not send Kathleen Kavalek to meet with Christopher Steele without Obama knowing. And remember, John McCain knew from the beginning. John McCain knew in December of 2015, if not all the way back to April of 2015, when the British got involved. And the British got involved to do what? Cover up to create lies. And you want to talk about a cover-up? This cover-up goes back to April of 2015 when the British were working with John McCain, working with Obama, working with Victoria Nuland, working with Comey in his 28 crimes of treason, which all led up to this. This was a long, thought-out, planned thing. This was the last thing that was done was in July of 2016 when John Brennan opened an official investigation of an operation, counterintelligence operation called Crossfire Hurricane, based upon framing George Papadopoulos with the help of the Brits. But that was late. Early on, the Brits were involved from the beginning, from the moment that they knew Hillary's weaknesses, and the weakness was her connection to Russia, and Mueller's connection to Russia, Andrew McCabe's connection to Russia, Podesta's connection to Russia. Oh, illegal connections, okay? That is what they were trying to cover up. The uranium one was the tip of the iceberg. There was much more than that. The uranium 145 million payoff was the tip of the iceberg. There's much more. We've told you all about it. So what was really going on? Don't forget Comey had Franklin Foer set up through Slate Magazine, the October surprise of the money being shifted to supposedly from Trump Towers to Alpha Bank in Russia. This is what they're going to try to hang the whole thing on, because the Telegraph article tells us basically a warning of the lies they're going to use to try to do the cover-up when the redactions come. They're going to try to say that the Brits accidentally ran across, and this is beautiful because it was Comey who paid Franklin Foer, and we know this because he was one of the people paid by the FBI. This is well known, but they're going to say it was the Brits who did this, that the Brits found that Trump was being paid by the Russians from April of 2015. Those are all lies, but they're going to try to weave it all together, mesh it all together, and try to say it's all the Brits, and then they're going to try to cover up saying, we can't tell you the whole truth because of sources and methods, sources being the British intelligence agencies, all the way to the top. That's what they're going to try to do, folks. So the fantastic lies that are coming out right now, that's why Devin Nunes wrote his letter to the president saying, when you see Theresa May, would you please ask these questions? Because the questions will reveal everything we're telling you, that the British were involved from the beginning. It was their Spygate, Five Eyes conspiracy, but it was working with all of our people.
It was an attack on the United States by Great Britain. And the reason I keep pointing to the Queen is because she's the head of this thing. And we need to point to her, make it personal. That old lizard lady and her Privy Council put out a plan to take down our president. And patriots, we cannot stand for that. We must cut ties with Britain. And this will help the British patriots too, because they are in the same struggle with this evil monarch.
Now, how do we know these things? Because Judicial Watch did FOIA requests, and those FOIA requests show that Kathleen Kavalek was talking with Bruce Orr, targeting Trump, saying, how can we target him for Russian associations? She was the person connected with Russia. Kathleen was. Orr is the criminal person connected with international criminality. They were trying to set up Trump early on, and we have their communications back and forth showing that they trying to link him to Russia. So they tried to link him to Russia to Alpha Bank. They tried to link him to Russia through Rob Goldstein. They tried to link him to Russia through Joseph Mifsud, whose name is really Joseph de Gabriel. They tried to link him through Felix Sater, who is certainly a Russian. They tried to link him to the Russian Henry Greensburg. Britain tried all of these things. None of them worked. Then he tried the PP video. He paid Sergei Millian to go and find it. He paid everybody. Standard, $100,000. Go find me the PP video. He paid every Russian that John McCain could come up with. And remember, John McCain is a communist and a Russian, and he was being literally paid through his foundation by the Russians while he was still alive, while he was still in Congress, and especially when he was running for president.
Yeah, Meghan McCain, your daddy is a traitor and will always be a traitor to the United States.
So when Comey couldn't come up with nothing, Brennan tried to pick up the ball and run with it, took that baton, tried all these things, tried to frame up of Papadopoulos, tried to frame up of Sam Clovis, tried to frame up, of course they'd already tried, that was Comey trying to frame Carter Page. So then he tried to frame George Papadopoulos through this incredible, most amazing bungled spy routine that I've ever seen anywhere. And it was completely bungled. And when that didn't work, they started off with the nonsense that a call came in from Estonia. They came off now with the Telegraph report stating it was British Five Eye intelligence proving that Trump was connected to the Russians. In other words, we're back to square one. And that's why Pelosi's out there screaming, as she always does when they're very desperate. She goes and screams the opposite. Who's a cover-up? She's the cover-up. She received the intelligence briefings on all of these things. She was complicit in the whole thing.
Well, who sat on that committee along with Devin Nunes? All of them knew.
Oh, absolutely. And all of the Senate Intelligence Committee knew. And anyone connected with John McCain, because he was blasting it everywhere, knew. And anybody connected to British intelligence knew. The entire British intelligence community knew. Our intelligence community knew. That's the reason Admiral Rogers jumped ship, because he saw what was going on. He had to get out of there.
So, Thomas, everybody now knows that the Brits were doing this to take down the president. So what can be done? We need to start arresting these people.
We need to go to the 7th floor of the State Department, where Hillary weaponized it for her, and she weaponized it for the election. Jonathan Weiner has come out and stated all of these things. Jonathan Weiner has spilt the beans, stating her real theft, APCO theft, $20 billion worth of theft and fraud through the Clinton Foundation. So Jonathan Weiner has come out and said this. Now Kathleen Kavalek, sorry, we have your very words. Bruce Orr, you have a big mouth, so does your wife, Nellie. And so we have caught you in all of this, but it was the 7th floor of the State Department where this was ran by Victoria Nuland, when they couldn't find any dirt on Trump from the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, nothing. They went to the State Department and they invented this stuff. And then Comey said, that's it. I'm doing all 28 of my treasonous crimes for all these October surprises, which they would merge with Brennan's counterintelligence operations. And that's why Comey could say he never had an investigation. It was a CIA counterintelligence operation, which is illegal to conduct against a U.S. citizen unless you have proof that they are an agent. And that's what the stupid dossier states. Please remember that all of you out there need to read this dossier. It is the most historic document in American history. It's going to be right up there with the Declaration of Independence. And when you read it, if you believe it, you're an idiot. And the first sentence says that Trump has been a Russian spy for 5 years.
Well, you would think that if he were, then they would have found something by now.
Why didn't they indict him? Why haven't they indicted him? And as you pointed out, after 8 investigations, literally hundreds of millions of dollars, and I can name all of them, nothing was found. They aren't even able to invent anything from a grand jury attempt to indict a president with no crime for a special counsel that was started with no crime. There never was a crime, and there's not going to be any crime. The only crimes are all the crimes of the Democrats. So the 7th floor State Department of Hillary Clinton was weaponized, and that's what's going on. And now, what do you see? You see the Brits doing their fancy dance.
Well, wait a minute before you go there, because people go, well, how does that relate? Well, remember, you've got the Senior Executive Service, and this is the operation that's embedded in our government bureaucracy that does the will of the Crown. And they were just carrying out orders that come to them from the Crown.
Absolutely. Arvinder Sambhai is the handler of the FBI.
Yes.
And the DOJ handler is Alison Saunders.
These are all Brits, folks. And if your news people are not talking about Senior Executive Service and about these details and screaming about Alison Saunders and Arvinder Sambhai, you need to ask yourself why.
Alison Saunders, we have proof because the dinner with Orrs and Nellie and Bruce Orrs messages, back and forth text messages. Alison Saunders, the head Crown prosecutor for the Queen, for Theresa May, okay, for the intelligence community, nobody higher than her, was running the back channel operation through Bruce Orr, who had already still passing on Christopher Steele information. Okay, after Christopher Steele was fired by the FBI. Remember, Christopher Steele was paid by the FBI. Stephen Halper was paid by the FBI. Okay, these are our agents. Carter Page was paid by the FBI. Felix Sater was paid. Sergei Emelian. All the criminals, I'm telling you, were on the payroll because that's how corrupt our intelligence agencies had become. And the State Department was leading it because Hillary had already weaponized it. Jonathan Weiner jumped ship early. Why? And when he jumped ship, he told the truth. Why did he jump ship? Because he was 100% guilty. He is the one who actually set up the meeting for Kathleen Kavalek to go meet Christopher Steele along with Sir Charles Farr, along with the rest of them that we've mentioned, the Brit spies, the Brit enemies that were attacking us. And remember, the other one, Alexander Downer, another Five Eyes Brit, what he called warrior for the Western Alliance. No, warrior for the Hillary Alliance, warrior for the Queen. That's who Alexander Downer was. Stole $25 million from the Australian government, gave it to the Hillary Clinton Foundation for AIDS drugs and didn't get any. And that was one of two, and that was the smaller of the payments. People aren't talking about the fact that he's actually gave $70-80 million in just a few years when he was basically the head of Australia. And so then he is the person who then comes out and gives his alibi just the other day, was it yesterday or the day before, saying, George Papadopoulos kept asking me about those emails. I didn't have anything to do with this. Wrong. He sent his assistant, liar, not his assistant, a counterintelligence operative to seduce George Papadopoulos to get him to come to a meeting with Alexander Downer at a bar. At a bar. Alexander Downer, the High Commissioner in England for Australia, sends a counterintelligence spy woman. I should use derogatory terms, but don't forget there were 4 of those women sent after George Papadopoulos, and they were all successful. And then George goes to a meeting at a bar where Alexander Downer keeps sticking his phone in his face saying, don't you have the connection to the Russian Hillary dirt? And George never once said yes because he didn't even know what he was talking about.
Listen, I was going through putting together the cat report, and I found this Twitter from a person who says, this is wild, but over here in my restaurant, James Clapper had dinner with this woman. Who is this person? This would be very important for the United States to know. And the picture was with our vendor, Sambai.
No!
Yes, I've got it up there because I want people to tweet back to the Twitter person and let them know we know who that is. It's our vendor, Sambai.
That's the picture Nunes is talking about.
Well, we want to know more details about it. The picture didn't have Clapper and Sambai in it.
Oh.
It was his eyewitness testimony that in this particular pub, restaurant, whatever it is, that Clapper and Sambai were together, and he gives the dates and everything. I'll put that in the description box, okay?
That's beautiful because
Yes.
we have pictures of Mifsud with all Western intelligence. Mifsud, who is on the, I would bet a nickel, he's on the payroll of the British intelligence because just follow the fact, who was he taking orders from? Our vendor Sambai.
Of course.
Who gave orders to George Papadopoulos. She gave orders to Gina Haspel to give orders to Matt Gaeta in London, who was also giving orders to Alison Saunders, Stephen Halper, and the whole gang.
So
our vendor Sambai was the key. She's the linchpin.
And we're not sure, he, she, whatever it is, works for the Queen.
Has to, because she used to be a Crown prosecutor also.
Yes, of course.
And she's in all these private intelligence agencies, which are just made-up groups. And who's in them? Alexander Downer, Christopher Steele, all of them.
But you know
all
what's
of them are
going to
in
be so exciting is Trump is getting ready to go over to visit the Queen, and then afterwards he's going to have tea with Melania and Camilla and Charles. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall for these conversations?
Don't shake hands with any of them. Don't drink anything they give you, and do not sleep where they tell you to sleep, Mr. President and Melania. They are trying to kill you.
Yes,
they tried to kill you last time.
They have no other out. They have to get rid of Donald Trump.
Remember, Mr. President, the man who was in the little helicopter who flew right over your head and could have dropped a bomb on you.
It wasn't a helicopter. It was
a
little glider.
A glider thing.
Parachute
It's like
thing.
a little helicopter. So the deal is, the Brits didn't stop that, but they witnessed it. So you were not protected by the British. How many times was your group, your caravan, interrupted and had to change directions? How many times did they disturb your schedule? Everything on your schedule was rearranged, Mr. President, to try to throw you into chaos. And that's the reason that, I don't know if you remember this, there were the crazy people during the explosions. Remember when you and the Queen went and they were blowing stuff up for you to show how powerful the Queen is? There were people who tried to get you then. And I'm glad you changed where you said you were going to sleep. I don't know if you were taking our advice. Do not sleep where they tell you to sleep. Do not drink anything, and do not shake hands with any of them. Tell them you have a cold. Do not shake hands with any of them. Polonium, uranium, all the things they kill people with in London, their whole thing is to assassinate people and blame it on the Russians, and everyone catches them later, and nothing ever happens. No Brit ever goes to jail for the crimes of killing people, assassinating people, and blaming it on Russians. And why is it always that it's the compromised people who were part of spying who are murdered?
Okay. Anything else as we wrap this up?
Please be careful, Mr. President, because Theresa May, her days are over, and you don't remember. Boris Johnson was seen with his arm around George Papadopoulos. Please remember that David Cameron had private meetings with George Papadopoulos. Let's remember the entire British power structure set up George Papadopoulos. Remember that they had articles every day in the Telegraph when George Papadopoulos was living in London, making him to be the greatest foreign advisor for Trump that there ever was, and that George Papadopoulos was going to be controlling Trump's foreign policy. Remember that it was George Papadopoulos who got Cameron and Boris Johnson to apologize for cussing out Trump in public. Okay? They literally backed off of Trump upon George Papadopoulos asking them to. That's how much they had vested in this horrible, horrible conspiracy to overthrow the United States government. Because they wanted Hillary in, because Hillary was simply going to kowtow to the Queen, as she has always done, because she wants to be just like the Queen, and she wants to be the monarch of America. So it was all set up. We were going to lose our constitutional rights, and the first American Revolution, which was never won, was going to be won by the Brits. But we are in the second American Revolution, being led by George Washington Donald Trump, and he is basically winning on all fronts. And so, Mr. President, please listen to Devin Nunes. Don't even meet with Theresa May until she answers those questions.
She's
Otherwise, she's
resign.
attempting... right.
She's going to resign, and not because of Brexit, because she doesn't want to have to face these questions about how the Brits try to overthrow our president.
If the Brits can't answer Devin Nunes' question, Mr. President, do not go to Britain, because they have only one intent, and that is to kill you. I'm sorry to have to say it, but it's just the British way, using what they've learned from the Vatican and the Jesuits. And the Jesuits always poison their people. Just look at the popes. In our lives, just look at the pope that was murdered by the Jesuits and the way the Jesuits have manipulated things. So please, Mr. President, anything that they have scheduled for you that gets changed, assume it is an assassination attempt.
Don't go. Just tell the old lizard lady she can come over and visit him at his house.
If you can't answer the questions, you ain't going, and you're certainly not going to have tea with Charles, who is the biggest pedophile and one of the most evil people on the face of the earth. Why would you have tea with him? He is the number one globalist, right there with Tony Blair, in the whole world. You are destroying globalism. You are destroying the monarchy. The monarchy, by the end of your second term, will be gone in Britain. There will be no monarchy. That is a prediction that I'm making, and I will put a nickel on that one. Because why? Spygate, British Spygate, is going to take them down.